you. I thought I wanted to start with a little apology for being so unprofessional compared to everybody else who's been on here so far, because I sneaked some notes on, so please forgive me. And also for being a bit scruffy. I actually had to get this T-shirt out of my dirty linen basket before I left, because it's so important and I wanted to be wearing it on stage. So thanks, James, for inviting me here to Southampton. It's really exciting to be here. I'm afraid that I have racked up quite a big carbon footprint coming all the way down on the train from Glasgow yesterday. So I'm sorry about that, but my ego and the idea of standing on this tiny little red carpet got the better of me. So sorry about that. So yeah, as James says, my name's Ellie Harrison, and I'm an artist and an activist, and I've been living in Scotland for nearly a decade now. In fact, I moved to Glasgow on the 15th of September 2008 to study for a master's at Glasgow School of Art, and that was the exact day that Lehman Brothers, remember them, went bust, with their $600 billion holdings disappearing overnight. So that was the day that the global financial crisis first kicked off. The crisis which we're still feeling the repercussions of now. So there I was, 29 years old, sitting in my studio in Glasgow, working out what on earth I could do to respond to this. And I had so many questions about how and why our economic system had arrived at yet another catastrophic meltdown. So I started to use my work to try and find the answers. So first of all, I made this little installation using a row of 11 popcorn making machines linked up to timers to reenact the history of financial crises over the last century. From the Wall Street crash of 1929, it's on that end, to the financial crisis of 2008. So with popcorn spewing all over the floor, I finally began to see the global picture. And that is that the frequency of these financial crises is accelerating up to the present day. But I was also interested in our role as individuals in feeding the capitalist machine. So I made this little piece to go alongside the popcorn making machines. It has a mobile phone installed inside the gallery, which I would send a text message to each and every time I bought something out in the real world. It's a little Nokia, so it would go doo-doo, doo-doo. And every time it did, the little dancing Coke can would jiggle with joy. And that same year, I made my vending machine, which is now on permanent display at the Open Data Institute in London, if you're ever visiting. The vending machine is reprogrammed to only vend out crisps when news relating to the credit crunch or any other recession-themed search terms pop up in the BBC news feed. So it means free crisps for any lucky passers-by. But it also aimed to illustrate the very scary fact that our access to a vital food supply is actually dependent on huge global systems way beyond our individual control. And then, at the time of the UN Climate Summit in Copenhagen in December 2009, I first began to notice that it's actually our role as consumers within a global system of production, which is the main cause of our unsustainable behaviour. So I thought about what I could actually do on an individual level to try to resolve this compromise. So in 2010, I published my own environmental policy on my website. So I was publicly declaring everything that I changed in my own life, but also in my work, to try and reduce my impact to a bare minimum. And during this time, I thought a lot about the contradiction in continuing to make art. Why had I chosen a career in the production of pointless objects in a world where the production and circulation of pointless objects was the main cause of our problem with climate change? So I thought about ways that I could reduce, reuse, and recycle my art. So first through the Early Warning Signs project, where I have 4 of these rotating signs that I first made in 2011 for a 1-week festival in London. So I decided, rather than chucking them in the bin, that I would repurpose them as part of a lifelong project. So every year since 2011, I searched for 4 arts venues based around the UK to adopt the signs and agree to keep them out on public display where they can continue to promote their cause. So one of the reasons why I'm here in Southampton today is because the Solent Showcase Gallery, which is just opposite the theatre here, is one of the 4 host venues for a sign this year. So you should have walked past it on the way in. If you didn't spot it, then look out for it on the way out. And then I decided that I could actually reduce my production of art by channeling vast amounts of time, energy, and ideas into direct political campaigning instead, specifically fighting for a more affordable and efficient and sustainable public transport network by taking it all back into public ownership and control. So I launched the Bring Back British Rail campaign. I made this t-shirt myself, but you can get other merch on the website if you're interested. Meanwhile, at a slightly more sustainable pace and using slightly less material methods, I continued to use my art to make visible the many absurd consequences of our capitalist system and the glaring contradictions that I could see between the continual and infinite growth that it demands and the sustainability that's going to be necessary to prevent climate catastrophe. So, in 2013, I made my other forecast to highlight several interconnected growth trends that I could see unfolding around us as a warning of the sort of future that we're heading towards if this system remains unchecked. So, global energy consumption going up and up and up, increasing levels of obesity, more and more single-person households and the social isolation which comes with that, and the rising CO2 emissions that result in large parts from changes to our lifestyles. This all means, of course, that our outlook for the next century is, for a lot, of very fat, very lonely, and very sweaty people. And then, the same year, 2013, I did a performance called Anti-Copitalist Aerobics, where I panted these words. Just get warmed up for this. Let's remove the profit motive from the distribution of all resources that harm us to consume more than we need. Let's remove the profit motive from the distribution of all resources that we need to consume less of, not more. I'm talking about energy, yeah? I'm talking about food, and I'm talking about the stuff we use to heat our homes. You can watch that online. So after all of that ranting, Fortunately, I had a little bit of time for a bit of self-reflection. I wanted to work out how come, after all those years going on about a sustainable lifestyle and how this was so important, I actually felt that I was always at work. I was always busy, 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 with no time to rest. It was hardly very sustainable. So, in 2014, I took time out to analyse more than a decade's worth of personal data to create my very own progress report. And to my horror, I discovered that my own lifestyle, measured here in terms of work, the number of emails that I was sending, and leisure, the number of lengths that I was swimming, my lifestyle had simply been mirroring capitalism's growth fetish. And what's more, I'd actually breached the transportation section of my own environmental policy on several occasions, but only ever for love or money, you'll be pleased to hear. But something obviously had to give. And so in 2016, I decided to take an extreme step. Well, extreme for somebody whose chosen career had, up until then, involved quite a lot of travel. I vowed not to leave Glasgow's city limits for a whole calendar year and not to use any vehicles other than my bike. Think global, act local. I actually did it. And for the whole of 2016, I barely travelled more than 5 kilometres in this more than 5 kilometre radius. Instead, I busied myself in Glasgow, and I channeled all my time, energy, and ideas into lots of local projects that were aimed at building a more equal, sustainable, and connected city. But the main aim of this durational performance was this: swimming against the tide of an economy and a society which always wants more, 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 I managed to create a downward trajectory, the opposite of growth. So my main question to the world now is, how do we reconfigure our value systems and our incentive structures so that they are finally capable of acknowledging that less is often better for our individual well-being, for society, and for the environment? Thanks.